The pale light of a Denver sunrise crept through the blinds of my $500,000 condo, its cold fingers brushing the kitchen where I stood rooted, a single sheet of paper. Trembling in my grip, I'm Emma Larson, 35, a forensic accountant who'd spent years untangling the webs of corporate fraud, but nothing could brace me for the words scrawled in my husband Taylor's jagged handwriting pinned to the fridge like a death sentence. Goodbye, Emma. Never loved you anyway. My phone erupted in a frenzy of fraud alerts. $200,000 siphoned from our accounts. My condo's mortgage teetering on the edge. Taylor, the transgender man whose charm had once lit up my world, wasn't just gone. He was a serial con artist preying on women like me, his vows a mask for a sprawling scam. My pulse hammered the faucet's drip, a mocking metronome, as I realized he thought he'd outsmarted me. But Taylor didn't know I'd been tracing his every step, my ledger of his lies, ready to spring a trap he'd never see coming. My breath hitched the condo's sleek hardwood and skyline views, turning claustrophobic as Taylor's words burned through me. Never loved you anyway. 4 years of marriage, shared dreams. Quiet mornings his hand in mine dissolved into a cruel lie. My $500,000 haven earned through late nights auditing fraud was now a battlefield, its walls echoing with the betrayal of a man who'd wooed me and countless others for profit. My mind flashed to the Google Keep logs I'd kept for months, secret calls to clients, jewelry receipts for gifts. I never saw offshore transfers to accounts I'd flagged. Another alert pinged. Transaction declined, account frozen, and a steely smile flickered across my lips. Taylor thought he was a puppeteer pulling strings across states, but he'd tangled with a woman who knew every knot. Was this the husband I'd loved, or a predator I'd outwit? I folded the note, my resolve ablade, knowing his escape was a one-way ticket to my justice. I'm Emma, and that note wasn't just a goodbye, it was the spark that ignited my fight. This isn't just a story of stolen money or a shattered heart. It's about the moment I turned a con artist's lies into his undoing and reclaimed my power. Want to know how I trapped Taylor and unraveled his web of deceit? Stay with me. This is my vengeance, and it's only the beginning. The air in the Denver Art Gallery was electric that spring evening in 2018. The glow of abstract paintings and the clink of champagne glasses weaving a spell I couldn't resist. That's where I met Taylor, his sharp jaw and easy smile cutting through the crowd like a beacon. I was 29, a forensic accountant with a knack for unraveling fraud. My life, a ledger of late nights and calculated risks. Taylor, a transgender entrepreneur with a story of resilience and ambition, captivated me. His charm, a warm fire against the chill of my solitary world. We married in 2020, pooling my accounting salary and his consulting gigs to buy a $500,000 condo in Lodo, its skyline views a promise of forever. But beneath the surface of our vows, shadows lurked secrets. I'd only later see a con artist's mask I'd mistaken for love. By 2022, those shadows grew sharper. Taylor's consulting work was a maze of vague clients and late-night calls he'd take in the guest room. His voice hushed. His screen dimmed when I entered. My friend Sarah, a fellow accountant, noticed first, her eyes narrowing at a dinner party. He's too smooth. Emma, she warned her. Wineglass paused mid-sip. Ask him about his past, but Taylor deflected my questions with a smile and a "why dig up old ghosts, love his charm," a velvet glove over a steel fist. I'd catch him studying our retirement accounts. His sudden interest in my finances cloaked as teamwork. My Google Keep app began filling with notes, unexplained withdrawals, a $5,000 transfer to an offshore account, receipts for dinners I never ate. Was I the wife who'd vowed to trust him, or a fool blinded by his carefully crafted lies? The crack widened one night in 2023 at a Lodo rooftop bar, the city's lights sprawling below, like a map of my unraveling trust. Taylor texted late client meeting, "Don't wait up," but my colleague Kate leaned in her voice low. "I saw Taylor at a hotel bar last week, Emma with a woman. He said she was a client, but her words were a spark igniting my doubts. I checked my Google Keep logs that night, finding a pattern transfers, timed with his trips calls from burner phones, a charm offensive whenever I asked about his day. A 2022 Pew Research study says 60% of fraud victims miss early manipulation signs lulled by emotional trust. I was teetering on that edge, my love for Taylor a blindfold over his schemes. Was he the partner I'd built a life with, or a predator weaving a web to trap me and others? Society tells us to trust love to see charm as truth, but that rooftop, those logs, they were my alarm screaming what my heart refused to hear. Taylor's smiles, his deflections weren't devotion. They were a con, a playbook I'd seen in fraud cases now playing out in my own home. A 2023 Psychology Today article says 70% of betrayals stem from emotional manipulation. A truth I lived as Taylor's lies piled like forged checks. My condo, my love, my future, they were stakes. I'd nearly lost to his game. I wasn't just Emma, the accountant who'd fallen for a dream. I was a woman waking to a fight I'd been trained to win. Want to know how I spotted Taylor's scam and began to turn his lies against him? The traps coming stay with me. The glow of my laptop screen cast stark shadows across my $500,000 Denver condo's office. Its sleek hardwood and skyline views, a hollow comfort as I pored over bank statements in the dead of night. It was 2023, and I was Emma Larson. 35, a forensic accountant whose knack for unraveling fraud had once been my pride, now a lens turned inward on my marriage. My husband Taylor, a charismatic transgender entrepreneur, had been my beacon since 2018, but his charm was fraying, revealing a darkness I couldn't ignore. His late-night calls, his sudden push for joint accounts, his deft deflections. Why worry about my client's love were no longer quirks but clues. My Google Keep app, a digital vault of my suspicions filled with notes, a $3,000 withdrawal labeled consulting a burner phone number, receipts for jewelry I'd never seen. My heart sank with each entry, my love for Taylor warring with a truth I was starting to dread. Was he the man I'd vowed to cherish, or a con artist spinning a web to trap me? The first crack came at a Denver coffee shop, the air thick with espresso and the hum of morning commuters. My colleague Sarah slid her tablet across the table, her face grim. Emma. I ran Taylor's name through a fraud database for a case. Look, the screen showed his name Taylor Reed, linked to a string of scams targeting women in Phoenix, Chicago, and Miami, all married to him under different aliases. My stomach churned, the coffee turning bitter in my mouth. He's charming successful women, then draining their accounts, Sarah whispered. You need to be careful. I nodded, my mind racing to the offshore transfers. I'd flagged the business trips with no trace. Taylor's voice echoed from last night, smooth as ever. Let's merge our accounts, Emma. It's romantic, right? His smile had felt warm, but now it was a mask, his transgender journey a story he'd weaponized to disarm. Was I his wife, or just another mark in his ledger of lies? The truth clawed at me, each clue a cut deeper than the last. My expertise honed on corporate fraud now mapped. Taylor's patterns, burner phones, timed withdrawals, a charm that turned questions into guilt. A 2023 Psychology Today study says 70% of con artists use emotional leverage to deflect scrutiny, a playbook Taylor followed with chilling precision. I thought of my friend Mark, who'd lost his savings to a scammer's trust me, promises his regret, a warning I heeded too late. My Google Keep logs grew a $10,000 transfer to a Cayman account, a hotel receipt from a city he'd never mentioned. I kept silent, playing the doting wife, my smile a shield as I built my case. A 2022 Pew Research study says 60% of fraud victims miss early signs lulled by love. I refuse to be one, my condo and future at stake. Want to know how I turned Taylor's lies into the trap that would bring him down? The hunt's coming stay with me. The first light of a Denver sunrise bled through the blinds of my $500,000 condo. its cold sheen glinting off the kitchen fridge, where a single sheet of paper hung pinned like a verdict. I was Emma Larson, 35, a forensic accountant who'd spent years chasing fraud. But nothing braced me for the jagged scrawl in my husband Taylor's hand. "Goodbye, Emma. Never loved you anyway." My phone erupted with fraud alerts, $200,000 drained from our accounts, my condo's mortgage teetering, our life gutted in a heartbeat. Taylor, the transgender man whose charm had once lit my world, wasn't just gone. He was a serial con artist, his vows a facade to fleece me and a string of women across states. My breath caught the coffee maker's drip, a cruel rhythm as my fingers traced the note's venomous words, but beneath my shock a fire kindled. Taylor thought he'd played me, but my months of Google Keep logs tracking his lies were a trap he'd never outrun. The condo's sleek hardwood and skyline views turned suffocating. Taylor's words, "Never loved you anyway," a blade twisting in my chest. 4 years of marriage, shared dinners. His shy smile, our dreams of a family, crumbled into a calculated lie. My $500,000 haven earned through late nights auditing corporate scams was now a war zone, its walls echoing with the betrayal of a man who'd married me and others for profit. My phone pinged again. Transaction declined. Account frozen, and I froze. My mind racing to my logs, $10,000 to a Cayman account burner, phone calls, hotel receipts from cities he'd never mentioned, I'd known for months, yet the note's cruelty hit like a sucker punch. Was this the man I'd loved or a predator who'd underestimated me? Across town in a dimly lit Lodo bar, Taylor leaned close to a contact, his voice low smug. "Emma's clueless. I've got 3 other women on the hook. Phoenix, Miami, Chicago." He didn't see me in the shadows, my phone recording every word, his arrogance a noose I was tightening. Taylor's laughter in that bar was a mirror to my pain, his casual boast. 3 other women confirming the scam Sarah's fraud database had flagged. He thought he was untouchable, his transgender journey a disarming story he'd spun to win trust, his charm a weapon to blind us. But I'd frozen our accounts, moved savings, and alerted my lawyer, Kate, my forensic instincts sharper than his lies. My heart ached, but my resolve was iron. I'd seen his patterns, logged his moves, and now held his confession. A 2023 psychology. Today's study says 65% of fraud victims are paralyzed by emotional betrayal, but I wasn't one of them. My condo, my future, my pride. They were stakes I'd fight for. I thought of my colleague Susan, who'd lost her savings to a scammer's charm, her regret a lesson I refused to repeat. Want to know how I turned Taylor's betrayal into the bait for his downfall? The trap's closing stay with me. The midday sun streamed through the windows of a Lodo cafe, its warm glow a cruel mockery of the ice in my veins as I sat across from Taylor, his familiar smile now a stranger's mask. I was Emma Larson, 35, a forensic accountant, whose world had shattered days ago with Taylor's note on my fridge. "Goodbye, Emma. Never loved you anyway." My $500,000 Denver condo. My life's anchor was nearly lost to his $200,000 theft part of a sprawling scam targeting women across states. Taylor, the transgender man I'd married, wasn't just a betrayer. He was a predator. His charm a weapon honed on victims like me. But he didn't know I'd been tracking him. Google Keep logs of his offshore transfers, a recorded bar confession boasting of 3 other women. My phone tucked in my purse held evidence shared with Rachel, a Phoenix lawyer he'd defrauded, and my lawyer, Kate. Today, I wasn't his wife. I was his judge, and this cafe was his courtroom. Taylor leaned forward, his eyes glinting with rehearsed remorse. "I'm so sorry, Emma," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "I panicked bad investments. I just need $200,000 from our emergency fund to fix this." His words were a performance. The same script he'd played in Phoenix, Miami, Chicago. Each marriage, a step in his Ponzi scheme. I played along my face a mask of concern. "How much trouble are you in, Taylor?" I asked. my voice steady, watching his flicker of triumph. He thought I was falling for it. My heart ached. The memory of his note, "Never loved you anyway." A wound that fueled my resolve. I slid a folder across the table. Its contents: a guillotine bank logs, burner phone records, Rachel's testimony, my recording of his bar boast. "You targeted the wrong woman, Taylor," I said, my tone laced with sarcasm. "Did you really think a forensic accountant wouldn't notice your Cayman accounts or your wives in 3 states? His smile vanished, his face paling as the cafe door swung open, FBI agents stepping in, badges gleaming their presence, a silent thunderclap. From Taylor's eyes, the cafe was a cage, his charm useless against the agent's cold efficiency. He'd seen me as prey, his transgender journey, a disarming tale to win trust, his lies a net cast over women like Rachel, Caroline, and me. "You don't understand," he stammered, his voice cracking, but the agents cuffed him, his arrogance crumbling like ash. I stood, my condo's skyline visible through the window, a symbol of what I'd saved. My Google Keep logs my bar recording. Rachel's courage, they were my arsenal forged in months of silent vigilance. A 2023 FBI report says 75% of fraud arrests hinge on victim-provided evidence. My folder was the key locking Taylor's fate. I thought of my colleague Susan, who'd lost her savings by trusting a scammer's pleas, her regret, a lesson I'd learned. My pain, my condo, my pride. They were stakes I'd fought for, and I'd won. Was I the fool Taylor had banked on, or the hunter who'd turned his game against him? Society tells us to trust love, to forgive betrayal. But Taylor's note wasn't just a lie. It was a declaration of war, and I'd answered with strategy. His scam, his other wives, his stolen millions. They were a web I'd unraveled my forensic skills, a blade cutting through his deceit. The FBI agents led him away, but my fight was far from over. Rachel, Caroline, and others deserved justice, and I was their ally. 2022 Pew Research study says 60% of scam victims lose hope, but I refused to break my condo, a fortress I'd defended. Want to know how I brought Taylor's empire of lies crashing down and gave his victims their power back? The justice is coming. Stay with me. The rain streaked down the windows of my $500,000 Denver condo, its skyline views, now a somber backdrop to the wreckage of my life. I stood in the living room, the echo of Taylor's handcuffs still ringing from the cafe where FBI agents had hauled him away. I was Emma Larson, 35, a forensic accountant who'd turned my husband's betrayal into his undoing. His note, "Goodbye, Emma. Never loved you anyway." And his $200,000 theft had exposed him as a serial con artist. His transgender identity, a disarming mask for scams targeting women across states. My Google Keep logs my bar recording of his boast. "I've got 3 other women on the hook," had sealed his fate, but the fallout was just beginning. My condo, once our shared dream, stood firm, saved by my foresight. Yet the whispers of Denver's social circles. How didn't she know cut deeper than Taylor's lies? My phone buzzed with messages from victims like Rachel and Caroline, their gratitude a lifeline. But my heart bore the weight of a truth I couldn't outrun. I'd loved a phantom, and now his empire was crumbling. The unraveling came swiftly, a cascade of revelations that stripped Taylor's world bare. His accomplice. Lena, posing as his sister, was arrested in Chicago. Her role in his Ponzi scheme exposed fake emergencies, urgent loans, all part of their playbook. Rachel, a Phoenix lawyer. Taylor had defrauded, called me, her voice trembling with relief. "You gave me back my life, Emma." Caroline, a Denver hedge fund manager he'd targeted. Shared texts he'd sent her identical to mine. His charm, a recycled script. My mother, once dazzled by Taylor, called, her voice thick with shame. "I pushed you to marry him, Emma. I'm so sorry." Her words stung, echoing the social whispers friends at the art gallery, colleagues at the firm, all murmuring. How could a forensic accountant miss this? A 2024 Forbes article says 55% of fraud victims rebuild confidence through advocacy, but I was still raw. My condo a fortress I'd saved, yet a reminder of the love I'd lost. My social media, once filled with our smiling photos, was quiet, while Taylor's accounts, once flashy with consulting boasts, went dark. His digital empire erased. From a holding cell, Taylor's collapse was complete. His charm shattered under the weight of evidence I'd gathered. He'd sat in that cafe smug, thinking he'd outplayed me. His transgender journey, a story he'd spun to disarm victims. Rachel, Caroline, women in Miami. Chicago, 5 states total. I just need the emergency fund. He'd pleaded, unaware. My folder held his doom bank logs. Burner phone records, my recording of his 3 other women boast. Now news reports flashed his mugshot, his eyes hollow. The man who'd written "Never Loved You Anyway" reduced to a cautionary tale. Lena's plea deal revealed their network spanned 3 countries, a multi-million-dollar scam built on broken trust. A 2023 psychology. Today's study says 70% of betrayed partners find renewal through collective action. Rachel, Caroline, and I were proof our shared stories, a shield against Taylor's lies. But my colleague Susan, who'd lost her savings to a scammer's charm, warned me, "Don't let their judgment define you, Emma." Her loss was my lesson. Society's whispers couldn't dim my fight. Society tells us to bury betrayal, to let shame silence us. But Taylor's collapse wasn't my defeat. It was my awakening. My condo, my savings, my pride, they were mine, defended by months of quiet vigilance. Taylor's note, his theft, his other wives, they were a fire that forged me. My Google Keep logs, a sword I'd wielded for justice. Rachel's gratitude, Caroline's texts, my mother's apology. They were threads in a network of survivors I'd helped weave. A 2022 Pew Research study says 60% of scam victims lose hope. But I chose to rise my condo a testament to what I'd saved my heart, a map to what I'd reclaim. Want to know how I brought Taylor's lies to court and gave his victims their voices? The trial's coming. Stay with me. The air in the Denver courtroom was thick with anticipation, its oak-paneled walls and towering windows framing a stage where justice would finally speak. I sat in the front row, my $500,000 condo, a distant haven, its skyline views replaced by the stark reality of this moment. I was Emma Larson, 35, a forensic accountant who'd turned my husband's betrayal into his undoing. Taylor's note, "Goodbye, Emma. Never Loved You Anyway," and his $200,000 theft had exposed him as a serial con artist. His transgender identity, a disarming mask for scams targeting women across 5 states. My Google Keep logs my bar recording of his boast. I've got 3 other women on the hook had led to his arrest alongside his accomplice, Lena, the fake sister. Now, as the judge's gavel fell, Taylor faced me from the defendant's table, his once charming smile replaced by a flicker of panic. This wasn't just a trial, it was the collapse of his empire, and I was its architect. The prosecutor, a steely woman named Diane, laid out the case with surgical precision. Taylor Reed, alias Taylor Brooks, orchestrated a multi-million-dollar Ponzi scheme, defrauding women through sham marriages in Phoenix, Miami, Chicago, and beyond. My folder passed to Diane, held the keys, bank logs, burner phone records, my recording testimonies from Rachel, a Phoenix lawyer, and Caroline, a Denver hedge fund manager. Rachel took the stand, her voice steady but raw. "He stole my savings, my trust, but Emma gave me justice." Caroline followed, her eyes locked on Taylor. "You used my dreams against me, but we're stronger now." Their words were a chorus, echoing my own pain. Each testimony, a brick, dismantling Taylor's lies. From the defendant's table, Taylor's gaze darted his charm useless against the weight of truth. "They're lying," he'd whispered to his lawyer. But the evidence was ironclad. His transgender narrative, once a shield, now irrelevant in the face of his crimes. Taylor's collapse was a spectacle, his panic palpable. as Lena's plea deal unraveled their network across 3 countries. Fake identities, forged documents, millions siphoned from women like us. The judge, his face carved with resolve, read the verdict Taylor read for fraud, conspiracy, and identity theft. This court sentences you to 20 years in federal prison. The gavel fell a thunderclap, sealing his fate, the gallery erupting in whispers. I met Taylor's eyes, his mask gone, replaced by a raw fear that mirrored the pain he'd inflicted. My colleague Mark, who'd lost his business to a scammer, had warned me, con artists always underestimate survivors. Emma. His loss was my lesson. Survivors don't just endure. We fight. A 2023 Denver Post report says 80% of fraud convictions rely on collaborative evidence. Our network, Rachel, Caroline, and I, had built an unbreakable case. My condo, my savings, my pride, they were mine. Defended by a sisterhood forged in betrayal. Society tells us to shrink from betrayal, to let shame define us. But Taylor's trial wasn't just his end, it was our beginning. His note, his theft, his web of wives, they were a fire that tested me, but I emerged stronger. My Google Keep logs a testament to my vigilance, Rachel's gratitude, Caroline's defiance, the judge's verdict. They were victories for every woman Taylor had preyed upon. My mother's apology, the social whispers, how didn't she know, faded against the truth we'd claimed. A 2022 Pew Research study says 60% of scam victims lose hope, but we chose to raise our voices, a chorus that drowned out Taylor's lies. Want to know the lessons that turned our pain into power and can shield your future? The wisdom's coming. Stay with me. I stood on the rooftop terrace of my $500,000 Denver condo, the city's skyline glittering like a constellation of chances I'd reclaim the autumn wind sharp against my skin. I'm Emma Larson, 35, a forensic accountant who turned a con artist's betrayal into justice. My husband Taylor had left a note on my fridge, "Goodbye, Emma. Never loved you anyway," and stolen $200,000, part of a Ponzi scheme targeting women across 5 states. His transgender identity, a disarming mask. My Google Keep logs my bar recording of his boast. I've got 3 other women, and the courage of victims like Rachel and Caroline had brought him to trial, his 20-year sentence, a testament to our strength, the whispers of Denver's elite. How didn't she know had faded my condo, secure my heart tempered by fire. Now, as I opened my notebook, its pages filled with lessons from my fight, I saw not just my story, but yours, a blueprint to shield your future from predators like Taylor. These 5 lessons aren't just my survival, they're your armor forged in betrayal's crucible, ready to build your fortress. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Trust your instincts. They're your first alarm. Months before Taylor's note, his late-night calls, his push for joint accounts sparked a knot in my gut, but I nearly ignored it, swayed by his, "Why don't you trust me?" A 2023 Psychology. Today's study says 85% of fraud victims regret dismissing intuition. My friend Lisa learned this the hard way. She ignored her partner's secret debts, losing her home when he vanished. Her tears at a Lodo cafe were my wake-up call. Your gut isn't a whisper, it's a warning. What's yours? Sounding right now. Lesson 2. Secure your finances always. I saved my condo by moving savings and flagging accounts before Taylor's $200,000 theft, but I almost trusted our joint accounts. A 2023 Forbes report says 60% of scam victims lose assets due to shared finances. My cousin Mark lost his retirement fund by co-signing with a trustworthy partner. His regret a lesson I heeded. Every dollar you protect is a wall against betrayal. Why risk your future on someone else's promises? Lesson 3. Document everything, it's your sword. My Google Keep logs, burner phones, offshore transfers, hotel receipts were my trial's backbone, exposing Taylor's scam. Without them, his never loved you note might have won. A 2024 Pew Research study says 70% of fraud cases falter without evidence. My colleague Susan trusted a scammer's verbal assurances, losing her savings when she had no proof. Your phone, your notes, they're your vault. What's the first clue you'll log today? Lesson 4, seek experts before the storm hits. I called my lawyer Kate when Taylor's first transfer raised flags months before his note. Her advice: freeze accounts, gather evidence, saved my condo. A 2023 Denver Post report says 75% of fraud victims who delay legal help lose significant assets. My friend Claire waited until her ex drained her accounts. Her delay a warning I avoided. A lawyer, an accountant. One call can be your shield. Why let hesitation cost you everything? Lesson 5. Turn pain into purpose, it's your fire. Taylor's betrayal. His note could have broken me, but I channeled them into advocacy, helping Rachel and Caroline reclaim their lives. My condo, my work became symbols of my rise. A 2024 Stanford study says 90% of resilient people use setbacks as fuel. Rachel's testimony, my trial or proof. My colleague Lisa turned her scam loss into a blog for fraud victims, her purpose a beacon. Pain isn't your end, it's your spark. Will you let it dim you or light your way? I'm Emma, and these lessons aren't just my victory. They're your battle plan. Taylor's lies, his theft, his web of wives. They forged a survivor who helped others rise. My condo, my strength, my sisterhood with Rachel and Caroline, they're proof you can reclaim your future. But this fight isn't mine alone. It's ours. Join me on TPT Affair Stories, my YouTube channel where every video sparks a path through betrayal's darkness. Hit that red subscribe button now. Drop your story in the comments. When did a betrayal test you? And how did you fight back? Like, share, and ring the bell for next week's 5 financial secrets to bulletproof your life tools that saved my home and can save yours. Don't let a Taylor steal your tomorrow. Subscribe to TPT Affair Stories, and let's forge your future together. I stood on the balcony of my $500,000 Denver condo, the city's twinkling skyline, a canvas of resilience, its lights reflecting the fire I'd reclaimed from the ashes of betrayals. I'm Emma Larson, 35, a forensic accountant who turned a con artist's lies into his undoing. My husband Taylor had left a note that seared my soul. Goodbye, Emma. Never loved you anyway and stolen $200,000 part of a Ponzi scheme preying on women across 5 states. His transgender identity, a disarming mask. My Google Keep logs my bar recording of his boast. I've got 3 other women, and the courage of victims like Rachel and Caroline had brought him to justice. His 20-year sentence, a testament to our collective strength. The whispers of Denver's elite. How didn't she know had faded my condo, secure my heart forged anew. Now as I looked out over the city, my notebook of lessons in hand, I saw not just my story, but yours, a call to rise to protect your future from predators like Taylor. This isn't my end, it's our mission, and I'm inviting you to join me on TPT Affair Stories, where every video lights a path through betrayal's shadows. Let me tell you about Susan, a colleague who sat across from me in our Denver office, her eyes hollow as she confessed her scam loss over lunch. She'd trusted a perfect partner who drained her savings with promises of a shared future, leaving her with nothing because she hadn't logged the late-night withdrawals, the vague excuses. I thought love meant trust, Emma, she said, her voice breaking. I was wrong. Susan's story was my mirror. Taylor's charm, his never loved you. Anyway note had nearly blinded me, but I chose to fight, logging his burner phones, offshore transfers, and bar boasts. One lesson saved me. Document your doubts because evidence is your power. I built a case that trapped Taylor, gave Rachel and Caroline justice, and I'm still standing. A 2023 Psychology Today study says 70% of scam victims rebuild through action. Susan's regret and my triumph are proof. One note, one log can shift your fate. What's the first doubt you'll record today? Here's the unfiltered truth. Some will call this vengeance sneer, that I'm too cold, too calculated for exposing Taylor's lies. I call it reclaiming my life. Taylor thought he could break me with a note, steal my condo, my savings, my trust, while conning women from Phoenix to Chicago. He didn't count on my Google Keep logs my alliance with Rachel and Caroline, our courtroom victory that shattered his multi-million-dollar scam. You can reclaim your life too, whether it's spotting a lie, securing your finances, or rising with others who've faced betrayal. The world wants you to stay silent to let shame win, but we roar louder together. That's why I'm sharing this on TPT Affair Stories, my YouTube channel where every video is a beacon for survivors. A 2024 YouTube report says, thriving channels forge communities. Your comments, your stories, your clicks fuel this fire. Will you let a Taylor's lies define you, or will you join us to rewrite your story? So here's my call, fierce and unshakable. If you've ever faced a Taylor's deception, a note that broke your heart, or a betrayal that tested your strength, hit that red subscribe button on TPT Affair Stories right now. Drop your story in the comments. When did a lie shake you, and how did you rise? Like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it and ring that bell so you don't miss next week's 5 financial secrets to shield your future tools that saved my condo, my pride, and can save your dreams. Don't let betrayal's shadow dim your light. Join me on TPT Affair Stories and let's turn your pain into power. The world's watching. What's your next move?